Peace be with all of you. Welcome to another virtual webinar that is organized by the World Muslim Communities Council. This council, which is considered an expert house to guide the organizations and the communities and the organizations and entities working to support World Muslim communities all over the world and to streamline their work and provide support to them, which is offering the proper support to the Muslim communities and enable the members to be full citizens and fully committed to the religion and to Islam. This series of webinar aims to underscore the concepts of multicultural concepts and aims to boost respect for human rights and human dignity and focus on tolerance and the sense of belonging that citizens should have. Today, the 30th of September 2020, would like to give a warm welcome to the speaker in today's forum, Ms. Leah Makhmutova, the chairwoman of the Muslim Women Federation in Estonia and in the Baltic states in Europe. Her lecture is titled The Reality of Islam in the Baltic States and the Importance of Islamic Centers in the Region. Please, Ms. Leah, you can speak and please accept our greetings and appreciation to you, please. Thank you very much. God bless all of you. Thank you very much for this introduction. Thank you very much, sir, for this. I would like to thank the World Muslim Communities Council for giving me this opportunity and giving the opportunity to all Muslims from all over the world, and particularly Muslims in these non-Muslim countries, to be heard and to have their voice heard at the international level. The brothers and sisters from all regions now will tune in and will listen to what I say and what the other colleagues will say, God willing. And they will listen to the other colleagues who will be explaining their own situations. Thank you very much. God bless you. And this is part of mutual cooperation. And the fact that Muslims are like a single body. When a certain organ suffers, the entire body interacts and supports it by this feeling of fever and staying up late. So this is the same concept of support, and I would like to thank the organizer for this. The topic of today's webinar is the reality of Islam in the Baltic states. These Baltic states, or the Baltics, are three states: Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Those three states overlook the Baltic Sea, in the sense that there are other countries that overlook the Baltic Sea, such as Finland or Sweden or even part of Russia. All of them, we can say that all of us are neighbors. And the Baltic Sea is the main water body that these countries overlook. So, but we say that the Baltic Seas, that the approved Baltic Seas, or the term the Baltics, applies to those three countries, which I'll speak about them, since they are close to one another and they have it's similar, they share the same history and they have very similar historical background. Not to mention that Islam first appeared in this region. The Baltic region, or the Baltic states, are a little bit different. I will tell you, for example, a country like Lithuania or Estonia and Lithuania, the arrival of Islam in Lithuania is different from the other countries. I will tell you more about that, but I'll give you a historical brief about that because I'm not a professor of history or an expert in history, but I will give you a quick brief and a brief introduction of how Islam reached those countries. As for Lithuania, as I mentioned, the history of Islam's arrival in Lithuania, it goes back to the end of the 14th century AD. So Islam first appeared in Lithuania for almost 6 centuries. Islam has been having its deep roots in Lithuania for 600 years. And it's a deeply rooted history. This goes back to the first Muslims to arrive into Lithuania. They arrived based on a request by Lithuanian prince. Who was called the Great Prince of Lithuania, because Lithuania was a major country and it extended all the way to Poland and neighboring areas. So he summoned a Tatari army. His name was Tidov in the at the beginning of the 4th century, and this army arrived with the objective of protecting Lithuania, and the entire Tartar army was composed of Muslims. All of them go back to the Golden Horde. All of them have their origins at the Golden Horde. Those Tartars arrived in Lithuania to protect Lithuania from any wars or from any crusades and from any attacks by crusades. This army entered into a famous battle called the Battle of Grunwald. And this army managed to resist and to protect Lithuania from the Crusades and from Crusaders' colonial campaigns. Look at this beautiful history of Muslims in Lithuania. Since that time, the prince gave them many areas of land, and also he kept an agreement with them that they will protect Lithuania. In the 17th century AD, some of those Tartars traveled to Poland. So the origins of Islam, or the history of Islam in Poland, is closely linked to the history of Islam in Lithuania. In the 17th century, part of of those people traveled to Turkey, and some of them remained in that region in Lithuania, those Tatars, and they settled there in Lithuania as of that period of time, and onward they settled there. So this is the historical background. And the name of Iceland was also placed on the map, and the person who did that was the Muslim expert in geography, whose name was Muhammad al-Idrisi. He was actually working and supporting and providing support to the king of Sicily. And he wrote a famous book. Entitled the Rojali Book, in which he described the climate of the regions and the 7 regions of climate, and he mentioned the name of Iceland as part of the names of the countries of areas he traveled to. He mentioned the name of Iceland. Iceland in the modern language is called actually Estonia. So it is well known now in the history of Estonia, and this is something being taught in schools, that the first individual to put Estonia on the map as a country was a Muslim scholar, the scholar geographer Muhammad al-Idrisi, and this is something that is really astonishing. As for Muslims' arrival in Estonia, they arrived to Estonia during the Livonian War in the 16th century AD. The Ivan IV forced the people under his authority and the people colonized by him to fight under his command. The same thing applied to the Tatars. He forced them to fight the city of Tallinn. That city was occupied by Sweden back then. It was a Swedish city. The origin of Tallinn, which is the capital of Estonia, is the Swedish city. So Estonia was occupied by Sweden back then. So since then, and after Lithuania and Estonia joined the Russian Empire in the 18th century AD, many of the Russian officers, or the officers who were working under the Russian Empire, they settled in Estonia. Among them were the Tatars, the Tatar officers who obtained high positions in the Russian army, and they settled in Estonia. So they bought major areas of land and they settled. And up till now, we in Tallinn here in Estonia, we have a Tatar suburb, an entire Tatar suburb and a Tatar street that continues to exist to date. And it reminds us and bears testament to that history when Muslims first arrived to this country. They lived and exercised the rituals of Islam. They had a mosque and so on. The first Estonian Islamic society was registered officially in the year 1928 in Estonia, in the city of Narva. And of course, here I will talk about this. I'm saying that this actually took place several centuries later on. Muslims existed well before that date, but as an official acknowledged Islamic society that has the ability and mandate to exercise its activities with full freedom and completely free. This actually started in the year 1928, and we celebrated the 90th anniversary, and in the year 2028 we will celebrate the elapse of 1 century to the establishment of the Islamic Estonian society. During the time of the Soviet Union and communism, the activities of that society became frozen, and after the independence of Estonia at the beginning of the 1990s, the Islamic Society was re-registered with the Estonian government in the year 1994. It was re-established, and new members joined the society because the early founders of that society were the Tatars. They arrived from that, or they were actually part of that race, and the Tatars, their origins go back to the river of Buga, or we say the Nizhny Novgorod area in particular, but their origins and the origin of the Tatars who settled in Lithuania were actually, they go back to the island, and they go back to the area that I referred to previously from the Golden Hobart. As for those Muslims, they had a mosque in the city of Narva, but during the Second World War, the city of Narva was demolished. The whole city was demolished along with the mosque. The mosque was also demolished. The entire city was demolished. So Muslims had to leave that city and go to Tallinn, which is the current city of the country. And they did not allow any of the original citizens to go back to Narva. And Narva now, which is a city that we say it borders Russia, the new residents from a Russian ethnic background, when they entered Estonia once again, they settled in that city. We would say that when Estonia was annexed to the, I don't want to get into the same way it was annexed or that there was agreement among countries. However, Estonia was under the Soviet Union's authority, and the original citizens, including the Tatars, did not go back to that city and settled in Tallinn. The new wave of the presence of Islam, or the arrival of Islam in Estonia, the second wave in the Baltic states, started once again in the 1990s, when that area became free once again, and those countries became independent and became independent states. They obtained their independence, Latvia and Estonia, simultaneously, and in the same year they obtained their independence. So in the Soviet Union, there was, I'm sorry, there would be some kind of mix-up, but in the Soviet Union, there was the second wave. And now we are talking about the second wave. The second wave, when those countries were under the authority of the Soviet Union, there was a system for mixing ethnicities. For example, you would give or you would employ some people in regions other than or away from their homelands. For example, in Offer, it is from one area to another to mix and mingle nations within the Soviet Union. That is how the Islamic nations or the Islamic, the ethnically Muslim citizens would travel to that area. They were away from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan or Azerbaijan. They were far from them. However, either they arrived just to seek work, because employment also in the Baltics wasn't that way, or they worked in the army and they settled there and continued to live there. So, for Latvia, as I mentioned, Latvia has a similar history. It's very similar to Estonia. As Muslims arrived in Latvia, when they first arrived, they arrived after Latvia joined the Russian Empire. This took place in the middle of the 18th century AD. So it almost has a similar historical background, just like Estonia. The second wave had the same thing, as I mentioned, for all the countries of the Baltics. During the Soviet Union's era, and after those countries obtained their independence, we had the third wave of Islam from outside this region and from outside of Russia. Students, Muslim students and Muslim businessmen came to the region. Some of them married Baltic women and settled in that region. They came from Arab countries and Muslim countries such as Turkey, and also from Pakistan and from some other Muslim countries. So now and recently, we have a larger number of students here, Muslim students. The region of the Baltics has been well known for having an excellent educational system, and also it provides excellent education in the field of IT or information technology and medicine. That is why a large number of students arrived into Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia. And some of them stay and some of them go back to other countries or travel to other countries to get better jobs and to get better work opportunities. So I have spoken about the third wave of the arrival of Islam. So this is very briefly a quick overview of the presence of Islam and the rise of Islam in this region. And I'm talking here about the Baltic states or the Baltics. I will speak briefly about the reality of Islam, the current reality of Islam. As for Islam, the current Islam, the number of Muslims in Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania, the total number of Muslims, we have around 10,000 and 10,000 and 10,000. We have almost 30,000 Muslims in the entire Baltic region. The official statistics do not reflect this number because we have filling data, and you don't have this as a mandatory data that has to be filled. For me, even those who fill in their data, personally, they may not refer to their religion, because reference to religion in this form is something that is not required, is not mandatory at all. That is why the official statistics are quite different in this regard. They may be talking about 2,000 Muslims only in the entire Baltic region, or sometimes they may say that they have 3,000 Muslims in the Baltic region, but these figures do not reflect the reality. Not to mention that we have a large number of expats and students and businessmen and those who obtained temporary residency or permanent residency in Baltic states. As for the Islamic centers, in these countries. As for Lithuania and its capital Vilnius, in the capital we have two Islamic centers. We have two Islamic centers in the capital. These centers serve Muslims in Europe in general. They are more like, these centers are more like a mosque and a social society or a social establishment that combines Muslims and brings Muslims together and pays attention to their causes and to their issues. And also it is a fatwa center, will be present in that Islamic center. Moreover, most of the time you would have also a Sharia judiciary center in the same center. So the Islamic centers in Europe, these Islamic centers work in Europe and in the Baltics in general. These Islamic centers generally play all of those roles. They are not just Islamic centers that play a limited role that is restricted to a certain scope of work. No, it encompasses all of those things that I've mentioned, in addition to the fact that these centers play a major role in building bridges of communication, with the different civilizations or the officials in those Islamic centers. They conduct various wonderful activities to introduce Islam to the society. They introduce Islam to the society. They introduce Islam as a religion to the entire community. They conduct celebrations, events, conferences, webinars, seminars, and so on. They conduct all of these activities. Islamic centers do this in that region. This is as for Lithuania, they have two centers in the capital. Moreover, Lithuania, they have mosques. They have three mosques in the Tatar villages that have a long-standing history, and they are protected by the states. They are Tatar villages. Moreover, there is a major mosque, a beautiful mosque made of stone rocks in Kausi. Kausi was the first capital of the great country of Lithuania, the same way it is called in historical terms. Moreover, as for Latvia, they have two centers in the capital. The capital of Latvia is Riga, and they have mosques in the different cities. They have mosques which are smaller than the Islamic center, but they also in turn play different roles that are equally important to the role played by the Islamic center. Because a mosque in that area is not just a place for prayers, it is also a place for conducting lectures and sermons and having Muslims come together, and after conducting some religious rituals, you would have offering iftar to fasting Muslims during the whole month of Ramadan. So in those areas, we celebrate, in those Islamic centers, we have different celebrations. For example, we celebrate the birthday of a new baby born or a newborn. So they celebrate with the families and they share those social activities with them. The Muslims in this region or in the city or in celebrating marriages or even the feasts that are conducted during marriages or even social and religious events. So the mosques and the Islamic centers in this region play major roles at the Islamic da'wah and social and even health-related activities, healthcare activities, and even educational activities. All of these roles are played by the Islamic centers in those regions. As for Estonia, we have a major Islamic center in Tallinn city. Moreover, we have a mosque in Tallinn, which is very close to, or in that mosque, we have the elderly gather in that mosque, Moreover, in Darba and Mardo city and Tartu city, we have smaller mosques, which in turn play all of those roles that I've just mentioned in terms of educational roles and cultural roles and social roles and even religious and of course religious roles and other roles, even interfaith dialogue or building bridges between cultures. All of these roles are played by the Islamic centers and the mosques in cities other than the capital. I will talk briefly about a number of problems and privileges. I don't know with which to start, with the problems or with the privileges. Maybe I will start with the problems until, so I would conclude my lecture with a positive note or conclude it on a positive note, God willing. So let's start with the problems that these problems are present in this area, but I would maybe these problems exist everywhere, or maybe these or similar problems may exist throughout Europe and even at the international level or in the whole world. I would start with the assimilation problem. We face the problem of full assimilation into the community. When I spoke about the different waves of Islam's arrival into the region, the first wave and the second wave, I can say that the first wave and the second wave, they have almost completely melted and integrated into the community. There are, of course, families and good old models and conservative models and models of Islam and models of Muslim generations that convey their heritage to the following generations. But the prevalent model for Muslims or for original Muslims here, when I'm talking about the first and second wave of the arrival of Islam, I'm talking about people who have been uh, who have been actually the original Muslims here. They have the citizenship and they represent a major part of the community. They are, unfortunately, Islam remained only in a formal manner for them, just they have only Islamic names. They exercise some religious practice and they perceive of themselves as Muslims. However, the spirit of Islam that used to exist in their grandfathers and forefathers, they have unfortunately lost it. On the other hand, we have the problem of racism. We have racism. Racism does exist, particularly against the third wave of expats. They consider them, they perceive of expats as strangers or foreigners. And that is why I'm not talking about the factors that led to this phenomenon. There are different factors that led to this situation. Why do we have this racism? What's the cause of this racism? In general, the Baltic people or the Baltic states, these countries have had a closed culture comparatively to the world. When I talk about Russia, for example, Russia, and I will refer to the middle of Russia. Russia is somewhat, at the beginning of the 1990s, was open to other countries. And they got used to a certain level. They got accustomed to having a large number of expats and having different ethnicities in Russia. And they have different ethnicities. However, the Baltic people, with the presence of Islam in that region, they remained, they clung to a closed culture, the original culture. Now they have begun to a certain extent to become more open-minded in terms of dealing with other cultures as they started traveling frequently, they started working in other countries. However, we still have this racism. This is not the only factor. There are other factors as well. Muslims may be the cause of that phenomena as well, because Muslims do not rush, or let's say They do not interact with the community itself. I'm talking about the third wave of the Islam's arrival here. They don't really exert a major effort to learn the local language. They don't make a major effort to serve the local community in all forms, to provide social services or cultural services or uh, other aspects of cooperation. That is why these might be among the factors. The presence of racism, and there are also, of course, political factors that are well known to everyone. Of course, everybody knows that we have the right-wing parties, which have become very active in recent years, or moreover, this political wave and those political parties, extremist political parties, now they have their voices heard. They have very loud voices, and there are many voters who vote for them. For example, the rightist wing party in Estonia, the number of supporters reached 45%. This is a massive number of voters, a major segment of the society who embrace the concept of right-wing extremism. So they say and declare, publicly that they reject Muslims, and they don't want to have any Islamic centers in the region, and latest extremist right-wing concepts in this regard, they win more voters. This manipulation of people's minds is well known actually in all European countries and not just in Estonia. However, there are also racism, various degrees of racism that vary from one region to another. In Lithuania, racism is less frequent, and the state supports learning the local language, and facilitates the process of learning the local language and integration into the community. Here in Estonia, we also have this support for learning the local language. However, this support is not integrated, and it is difficult to learn the language itself. The language itself is difficult. The Estonian language is difficult, and the Latvian language is difficult. This is also another factor to the lack of integrating those expat communities into the local community. I've also spoken about full assimilation. I've also spoken about racism. The problem or one of the problems that face Muslims in this region is the lack of Muslims' presence in the political arena and in decision-making positions. Only very few Muslims have reached such positions. If you talk about politicians, we have only a handful number of Muslim politicians here. Maybe even we may mention them. We have only one or two Muslim political figures in every region. So also when referring to other positions which may one way or another influence the community or support Muslims or protect their rights and so on. We are talking about a problem that exists in all European countries, not just in Estonia. But in Estonia, the problem is more evident and is much clearer when compared to other Western countries. If we compare Estonia even to the UK or to Finland, which is close by, our situation is radically different from them. Moreover, among the problems is the limited number of Islamic centers and mosques. We still need more of them. We still need more mosques and Islamic centers in this region. Yet, let's see, in Lithuania, for instance, the Islamic centers in Lithuania, they date back more than 6 centuries. We have historical mosques which are protected by the state and observed by the state, as highlighted by the Mufti, Sheikh Ramadan. There isn't much of a need for more mosques. They have mosques, but now we need people to go to those mosques. We have the mosques, but the problem is, as I said before, that the full assimilation into the community results into having those mosques empty. So in Estonia and Latvia, we have limited number of mosques and overcrowdedness of mosques in they become very crowded when we conduct the Friday sermon or the Eid prayers in particular. Moving on to another point, the absence of financial support from the government to Muslim organizations or Islamic organizations. We are facing this problem. The financial support does not come from the government. The government does not mind if we want to establish societies, Islamic societies and Islamic establishments, and establish new Islamic centers and mosques. Officially, we don't have any rejection of that, but to build a mosque, we need a permission and we need arrangements, specific arrangements. However, in general, there is no law against that, and the law does not prohibit the establishment of those mosques and those Islamic centers and such establishments. However, they do not support such things. Muslims themselves are responsible for establishing those Islamic centers. They have to raise the funds and make donations, look for donors, even salaries of imams, the salaries of imams and the salaries of the heads of Islamic centers. It is difficult to find a certain entity that would support those salaries or pay those salaries for those imams, which is the opposite of other Western countries, which have begun to realize how important it is to provide support to imams, particularly in terms of salaries, so that the imam in that area or that region would be neutral and to ensure that he is affiliated with the foreign countries that may support that imam. He would not be an ally of any foreign country. He will be a person or an individual who works for the public good in the country where he resides and lives, and works as a citizen of that country who has his own rights and obligations. Recently, those countries, those Western countries, have begun to realize the importance of this. However, we still have countries in Europe that do not understand this concept, and they would say that we are a secular country, we have nothing to do with religions, this is your own affair and you have to handle it on your own. Before the revolution, the famous revolution in the year 1917, Muslims had fortunes and had awqaf or Islamic endowments in those regions. They did not need any support. They handled their own affairs. They had their own religious endowments and establishments in Lithuania, in Estonia, and in Latvia. And Muslims would cover the costs, all the costs of those establishments, and also conduct different activities and diverse activities, which included activities that benefit the entire country, not just Muslims. There were donations, there were charitable projects, and so on, joint charitable projects between Muslims and the state where they live. They consider themselves part of that country, and they also make donations to the country. But after the revolution of the 1917, all Muslims' assets were confiscated. There were no longer any religious endowments or awqaf. They were all confiscated. And after those countries gained their independence and became independent from the Soviet Union, those countries, Muslims in those countries, have become in need of support. There is no support for them by the government, and they don't have the financial capabilities to handle all of those requirements, to cover the needs, the financial needs. and to meet those financial needs. The foreign support or the foreign funds cover certain and specific projects, and this is not considered is not considered long-term support. It is only short-term support. Some countries would just donate for the iftar of fasting Muslims, or making sacrifices for during the Eid and so on, slaughtering animals and things like that. But Muslims need support and long-term support, not just short-term one. As for the privileges, I will talk now about the privileges, and I will conclude my lecture about the reality of Islam in the Baltic states. Of course, we have privileges that I may refer to. We have freedoms in terms of exercising religious rituals. No one can prevent us from exercising the rituals of our religion. And as I said previously, the state does not mind Muslims' activities in different fields. They do not mind. The state does not mind that, but still it does not support that. As for the advantage or the privileges that Muslims have in this region, is that those countries acknowledge, and those states and those countries and governments acknowledge that they have not had any issues with Muslims who have been living here for centuries. Never. These governments have, and these countries have never perceived of Islam as a problem here. It was quite the opposite, actually. Muslims participated actively in the development of this region and of those countries. And as I said at the beginning, there are famous names and famous historical stories, such as the Tartar army that arrived into Lithuania to protect Lithuania and to protect the Lithuanian prince. Then they traveled to Poland. So those members of the army reached the highest positions in the army. They became generals. So we had Muslim generals, and their names are part of the history of Lithuania and Poland as heroes who participated in the development of those countries and protecting their independence and protecting the unity of their territory. So we as Muslims in this region, we are proud of this history. And of course, this is a major advantage and a major privilege, of course. However, we as Muslims, we have the commitment not just to remember history, and we say that we have a glorious history, and we are proud of our history, and we protected this region, and we came here with peace, and came here to protect peace and stability. And we developed the region. Yes, we also need to, for the members of the third wave of Muslims here, they should remember the glorious Islamic history in this region, and they should also stay true and remain true to that good image and avoid distorting that image. And they should also continue to develop the communities and to serve the community, and they should not be afraid of engaging into social activities in all domains of life and all walks of life. They should not be content with living at the sidelines of the community and waiting for something to be given to them, or that the government would hand over some assistance to them, or other positive things. I believe this is one of the most important privileges that we have here. I also mentioned the problems and the privileges, and maybe we have some questions. If you have any questions, I'm ready to answer them. If you want me to clarify anything, if I remember anything, I will continue to say whatever I forgot to say here. Please, Ms. Leah, thank you very much. You can now conclude your lecture, and then we'll have a number of questions. Yes. Thank you. As for, I try to be brief as possible. I tried to give you a historical background and the reality of Islam and the importance of Islamic centers in the region. I will stop at this point, and I would like to thank you for listening, and I will wait for your questions. God bless you. And praise be to Almighty Allah. Yes, Miss Leah. God bless you. Thank you very much for this wonderful lecture and highly valuable information. You have really highlighted the experience of Muslims in the Baltic states in general and in Estonia in particular. Thank you very much for this wonderful lecture and this great information about the experience of Muslims in integration and building those countries, and how Muslims first arrived as the Tartars arrived and brought with them Islam to that region. And you have also talked about full assimilation into the community and the lack of Muslim centers and lack of funding for Muslim centers and the need for long-term Islamic endowments or awqaf. You have also highlighted the privileges that you have in the Baltics and in Estonia, particularly freedom to exercise the Islamic rituals, and that the government does not mind and does not reject those rituals. And you have a major role to play in social services. You have also referred that we should not be content with being proud of Islamic history in that region. We should also look forward to providing more positive inputs and developments in the community. However, there is a question here. Can you give us some bright examples and positive examples of tolerance and peaceful coexistence between Muslims and non-Muslims in the Baltic states? Can you give us some positive examples of tolerance and peaceful coexistence in your countries? Since actually, if I talk about Estonia, I have to apologize to the officials of those centers, because I only, as a modest individual, represent this entire region. Of course, there are muftis and there are the heads of Islamic centers. Maybe if they will speak even better than I do. I apologize to all of them, and I apologize for playing this major role and discussing the reality of Islam and the importance of Islamic centers. However, we have been in close cooperation, and those three countries are always cooperating, and they cooperate for doing good deeds. For Islamic centers located in this region, we cooperate, and we feel that we are facing the same challenges, we are facing the same problems, and therefore we collaborate together. For example, some of the good projects that we work on, we participate together in those projects. As for your question about this point, of course, there are very great examples and outstanding examples. For example, in Estonia, Estonia is a secular state. So, as a secular state, the government has nothing to do with the presence of different and diverse religious sects. The largest religion here is the Protestant Christians. Next, we have the Orthodox Christians and the Russian Church, and the Protestant Church goes to Germany. As for Muslims, when we have any problem or issue, we try to convene and to try to solve that problem. And the same is conducted, for example, we had a meeting to solve the problem of slaughtering sacrifices from the Islamic perspective, or according to the Islamic Sharia. We collaborated with the Jewish community here. It is allowed in Latvia and Lithuania, but in Estonia, they prohibited slaughtering animals to protect animal rights. They have their own opinion and they have their own beliefs in this regard. However, the Imam convened with the rabbi, with the local rabbi, and they agreed to go together to the Ministry of Agriculture, to submit a request, because this goes against their religions, and this is a violation of the law, because the law stipulates freedom of religious rituals. Moreover, in some cases, we consult one another. We even exchange numbers. We have circumcision, and circumcision is conducted for Muslims and Jews as well. So we exchange numbers, in this regard to know the best doctors or surgeons who can make this simple procedure. So these are simple things and simple examples, but if there's any law that violates or limits religious freedom, we convene and we go together to discuss it with the government. We also conduct meetings at the municipality for the believers of different religions. We also have the Islamic Center, for instance. We have the open days. The open days are days on which anybody from any religion can come to the center and visit the center. We have teachers are gathered, and we have the cultural activities. The religious cultural teachers have a role to play. We give them an overview about Islam, and we tell them about the tolerance that is mandated in Islam, and we show them our hospitality. In addition to the university students, they come to us, and we try to project to them the proper image of Islam and the history of Islam in Estonia, and how Muslims have never had any issues with these countries, and the government has never had any problems with Muslims. Of course, these are all good things, and we have good relations with, as Muslims, we have good relations with the believers and members of other religions. These are very simple examples. I don't have in mind other examples, but of course, these are some quick examples. Thank you very much for this wonderful lecture and highly beneficial lecture, which enabled us to realize the full scope of the experience of Muslims in Estonia and the Baltic states. Thank you. Once again, would like to thank you very much, and we hope to meet you again soon. Thank you, and God bless all of you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and my best regards to the organizers of this conference, of this webinar. And I would like to thank His Excellency Dr. Bashir, and I would like to thank His Excellency Dr. Ali Rashid Naimi. I would like to thank you very much, and I would like to thank you very much for this wonderful introduction to this webinar. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening. Peace be with all of you. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Goodbye. Peace be with you. Goodbye.